Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the 2024 annual report release. Please welcome to the stage President and CEO of Tennessee State Collaborative on Reforming Education, David Mansouri.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning on a beautiful December morning for the release of SCORE's 2024 State of Education in Tennessee report, Building a Brighter Future. So 2024 marks 15 years since SCORE was founded with a mission to catalyze transformative change in education so that all students can achieve success. Today, that commitment to Tennessee students and their success remains stronger than ever. And as I reflect on our founding and look into the audience today, I'm especially reminded of the spirit of collaboration that fueled the formation of SCORE. Senator Bill Frist, in partnership with many of you in this room, named our organization the State Collaborative on Reforming Education for that very reason. And I'm humbled and honored to see the way that partners like you continue to help us keep that collaborative spirit alive each and every day. I'll note at the beginning, just this report, as an example, benefited from the partnership and engagement of more than 38 different organizations and more than 50 partners who provided feedback and engagement around the recommendations today. So whether you are here in person at the State Museum or tuning into our live stream virtually, your voice is a really important one in the conversation about how to advance policies, practices, and investments that will improve student outcomes now and in the year to come. And so on behalf of the SCORE team, our board, Senator Frist, thank you for your leadership and partnership in this work. So as SCORE looks toward the next frontier of transforming education in Tennessee, we do so grounded in our mission, strengthened by partnerships with many of you in this room, and led by student-focused priorities. We continue to strongly support innovative policies and practices that align with our overall goals, where one, all students receive an excellent public K-12 education. Two, all students earn a credential or post-secondary degree of value that prepares them for a career enabling economic independence. And three, that economically disadvantaged students, students of color, and rural students see improved success across all goals relative to their peers. And through the work of educators, parents, policymakers, advocates, employers, community leaders, Tennessee has been a trailblazer for the last 15 years in championing student-centered strategies. We've set high expectations for students and educators. We've held ourselves accountable for student outcomes, and we've invested in research-backed initiatives to improve student learning and accelerate progress for more students from kindergarten to the workforce. But as we look to the next chapter, we also know that Tennessee has to do even more. While student outcomes in our state are trending in the right direction, as you saw from much of the data in the main lobby, far too many students are still being left behind. Only a third of our 3rd through 8th graders are proficient in English and math, and opportunity gaps by race and socioeconomic status are growing wider. In addition, we are not graduating enough students from post-secondary to meet the state's growing workforce demands, particularly when we look at the data for students from historically underserved groups. And as our education landscape is changing, so is our labor market. As new jobs emerge and Tennessee's economy grows, our state's approach must evolve too. We have to ensure our education systems are preparing students for jobs that will enable choice-filled lives. We also have to better understand what data tells us about how students are moving through the education system. We must use that information to support all students, particularly those with the highest needs. So that's why SCORE is calling for a new strategic alignment to prepare more students for success in Tennessee's rapidly evolving economy. We believe that the next phase of education innovation should not just be about helping more students earn a degree or credential, but helping more students gain a degree or credential of value that leads to a career enabling economic independence. The work to build a brighter future for students will take the work of everyone in this room, and we know it will continue to be a journey for each of us. We have no doubt that with shared focus and collaborative advocacy, we can realize that new frontier for students in our state. So I want to turn to specifically the report we are releasing today. Feel free to flip along in the reports that you have in your chairs as we go through both the data and the recommendations that we are providing today. So as I mentioned, since our founding in 2009, SCORE has released a State of Education in Tennessee report each year to monitor the progress made across the state to improve student outcomes and to highlight recommendations for the upcoming year. This year's report is looking to the next frontier for transforming education in our state, and we have to recognize the ways in which the education and work landscapes are evolving. We have to make sure our priorities and recommendations evolve at the same pace. And specifically, and this is I think a sort of focus overall, Tennessee must expand its vision for education so that each student has the opportunity to succeed in school and be prepared for a career that enables economic independence. And as we work to support that goal for students in our state, we will be focused on three key priority areas in 2024. First, expand student opportunity by strengthening foundational policies. Second, build effective pathways between education and career. And third, ensure K-12 supports meet student needs. Before we dig into these three priorities and the specific recommendations that you have in the report, we want to set the stage for our conversation by highlighting some of the data about how Tennessee students are currently progressing from the classroom to a career. Some of this data you saw out in the main lobby, and we want to elevate some of this data again here in this conversation. So when the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the education system at every level, education leaders in Tennessee showed a clear commitment to accelerating student learning. And that commitment is paying off in student outcomes. Tennessee students made large gains on state assessments in both English language arts and math in the 2 years since the 2021 achievement lows. The English language arts proficiency rates for all students in grades 3 through 8 is almost 3 percentage points higher than the 2019 pre-COVID rate. Tennessee is actually one of the few states exceeding pre-pandemic proficiency levels, making it an exemplar for English language arts pandemic recovery efforts. For math, Tennessee students are also showing notable progress with over 10 percentage points of growth since 2019. However, the state has not caught up to the 2019 pre-COVID high of almost 41% of students in grades 3 through 8 proficient in math. These improvements across subject areas can and should be celebrated. But we also know there's more work to be done, with roughly just a third of students in grades 3 through 8 proficient in English language arts and math. It's clear we are not preparing all students with the basic skills needed to succeed in education and the workforce. A closer look at the data also shows significant gaps in the proficiency of different student groups, gaps that are only widening. Tennessee is not yet supporting all students to achieve. As students progress from elementary and middle school to high school and post-secondary education, the challenges only compound. And I want to spend really a minute here on this chart. It might be easy to kind of get bamboozled about what's going on here, but want to sort of dig into the details. Only 26% of Tennessee students who started high school in 2012 went on to attend post-secondary education and earn an award by the summer of 2022. In other words, 6 years after graduating high school, only 26% of those students had earned a post-secondary degree or credential. And when looking at students of color in that same cohort, the numbers are even lower. The years of high school and post-secondary education, as we all know, shape the trajectory of the lives of young people. And offering the right supports at every step is essential to ensure that students successfully navigate this pipeline and are effectively prepared for a career that enables economic independence. The current pipeline from K-12 through post-secondary education and ultimately to the job market is broken for too many students. And we are losing too many Tennesseans along the way who want and deserve better opportunities. The leaky pipeline also has real implications for the state's economic needs. While the state's post-secondary attainment rate has been consistently growing, it falls short of meeting workforce need. Research tells us around 60% of the state's jobs require post-secondary education, with just over 47% of Tennessee adults holding some kind of post-secondary degree or credential. There remains a gap between the demand for a skilled workforce and what the Tennessee education system is producing. Employers need more educated Tennesseans, and Tennesseans need access to high-quality educational opportunities that prepare them for success in a career. We know education has the potential to be life-changing for Tennesseans. 5 years after graduation, those who graduate from a Tennessee post-secondary institution are earning, on average, 1.5 times more than high school graduates, and the return on that investment becomes even larger at mid-career. Tennesseans with post-secondary training valued by employers also qualify for a larger portion of the state's jobs and show greater resilience in the job market during an economic downturn. By fostering a strategic alignment across education and the workforce, we can illuminate which educational paths lead to success for students and maximize the benefits students experience. So with this context in mind, we're going to now move to our priorities for 2024 as we really take the next steps to transform our state's education system to ensure all students can achieve success. So our first priority for 2024 is centered around strengthening some of Tennessee's long-standing foundational policies, policies that I know so many folks in this room have played a critical role in advancing. 3 areas that deserve particular attention in the coming year are longitudinal data, Tennessee Promise, and post-secondary outcomes-based funding. These policies are nationally recognized and had contributed to Tennessee's growth in the past decade. But as a state committed to continuous student-centered improvement, we must be willing to evaluate where these efforts are not yet meeting their full potential and to make necessary adjustments. So good decision-making relies on data, which you will notice in every section of this report is something that we are calling out. Students and families need data to better understand which educational opportunities lead to high-wage careers. School leaders need data to evaluate which educational opportunities are yielding success, and employers need data to inform talent pipelines. Tennessee's longitudinal data system has been in place since 2012, creating a really important foundation for data-driven decision-making. Yet aggregate information from that system is not accessible and is therefore not actionable. For the power of data in our state to be fully realized, SCORE is recommending creating publicly available data dashboards, developing model data sharing agreements that school districts and post-secondary institutions can use, and ensuring a vision for the state's longitudinal data system that persists over time. We also believe that adding career-relevant information to the system is essential to better understand how students move through education into the workforce. Next, Tennessee Promise. As you all know well, Tennessee Promise is a landmark state policy around post-secondary access. By establishing the Tennessee Promise program in 2014, Tennessee became the first state to provide statewide tuition-free access to community and technical colleges. But the scholarship program has not yet gone far enough to support completion. And the community college outcomes across the board in our state are not yet where they need to be. So as the program approaches its 10th year, the next phase of Tennessee Promise and community college improvement should focus on prioritizing investments to support completion and clearly articulating the ways community college programs of study align to career areas. And the third area to close out the priority around strengthening foundational priorities, this report highlights opportunities to improve our post-secondary outcomes-based funding formula. Tennessee led the nation with outcomes-based funding and stands out today by awarding over 80% of dollars based on outcomes like graduation. Research shows that the outcomes-based funding formula has contributed to improvement of some outcomes in our state, but not all outcomes. And data show the state's institutions of higher education are not yet supporting all students to graduate. So we believe it's time to update our vision for the outcomes-based formula in our state by evaluating whether the metrics included reflect the most important priorities for student success and incentivizing institutions to offer career paths that enable economic independence for students. So our second big priority area is building effective pathways for students between education and careers. We all know that education is the foundation of workforce readiness, but the paths students walk from education to careers are often murky. Not all opportunities offered across the state are effectively helping students progress toward economic independence. And we cannot leave students to navigate these complex paths without clear guidance and support. So to build pathways leading to a brighter future for students, we have to better articulate the ways in which education and careers align. So in today's education landscape, students have a menu of over 1 million unique degree and credential opportunities. And not all of these opportunities will have the same return on investment. So it's critical for students to have a complete picture of the earning potential of those degrees and credentials. Additionally, the state needs to understand what skills are most valued by employers to help students get on a path to a career that enables economic independence. Next, early post-secondary career experiences are another valuable tool for preparing students for success in life. Tennessee has long prioritized the offering of these experiences, things like dual enrollment, career technical education, and work-based learning. In the next chapter of work as a state, it's important for Tennessee to establish mechanisms to evaluate the quality of these opportunities, ensure access to data that helps monitor how students are moving through the education pipeline, and incentivize the highest quality opportunities that are resulting in improved student outcomes. And finally, in this second area, we want to elevate the importance of data-driven partnerships between education and industry. Innovative partnership models such as apprenticeships that lead to a degree or credential, or bringing industry leaders into K-12 classrooms can give students valuable experiences that prepare them for lifelong success. These partnerships should become a key feature of Tennessee's education and work landscapes moving forward. And our final 2024 priority area is to ensure K-12 supports meet student needs. K-12 schools and districts in Tennessee have experienced major policy and practice changes in the last 3 years. And these changes include the adoption of new and nationally recognized K-12 student-weighted funding formula, the introduction of several important strategies to bolster the teacher pipeline, and the launch of important high-dosage tutoring and summer programs to support student learning. All of this is in addition to dealing with general pandemic-related disruptions. And we know that in the coming year, we need to identify ways to meet student needs in the context of these many recent and important changes for students in our state. So first, highly effective educators have a notable impact on student achievement, making them a central piece of the puzzle for meeting student needs. And with current teacher shortages, recent policy changes, and the urgent need to accelerate student learning, supporting prospective, new, and veteran educators is more important than ever. Many efforts to support educator pipelines have already been put in place across the state, such as increased flexibility for initial entry to the profession through permits or through grow your own programs. SCORE recommends evaluating and building upon these initiatives, as well as collecting and reporting data about the educator labor market, all with a goal to further student access to highly effective educators. Next, high dosage tutoring and summer learning are two of the newly introduced and critical pillars of Tennessee's K-12 landscape. However, not all of these efforts are fitting seamlessly in with previously existing structures of support, such as the state's response to instruction and intervention framework. So SCORE is recommending ensuring that the state's guidance for supporting students aligns with core classroom instruction and what research and data tells us will drive improved student achievement. As we continue implementing a suite of academic supports for students, it's critical that we understand which of those supports are best serving students and to align to the strategies that are most effective. And finally, funding charter facilities, charter school facilities, remains a leading challenge for the state's public charter schools, which serve predominantly students of color and economically disadvantaged students. Public charter schools in Tennessee need sustainable funding to support upfront and ongoing facility costs, as well as improved access to existing publicly funded facilities that are underutilized or vacant. SCORE is recommending a multi-pronged, comprehensive effort to close the charter facility gap so that public charter schools can devote resources and capacity to what matters most, student learning. So that closes our presentation of key priorities for today. I'm just really grateful to you all for listening as we walk through these priorities and the broad range of recommendations we're making, all of which, again, we believe are critical to helping to advance student success in the year to come. We're really excited to be working with each of you to strengthen existing policies, to support innovative new approaches in our state, and to prioritize efforts that are driving to improvement for all students. I know that standing here and walking through these priorities just shares just a glimpse into what could be possible for the next frontier of education innovation in our state. And so to bring context and perspective around these recommendations, we've assembled just a rock star panel of education leaders from across our state to discuss the need for these changes in their communities and in their own work, as well as to highlight some of the work that they are already doing to advance progress on these priorities. So I'd like to ask and welcome our panelists and our moderator to the stage. And I'm really happy to introduce to you today's moderator, a member of our SCORE Board of Directors, the Honorable Alberto Gonzalez, Dean and Doyle Rogers Professor of Law at Belmont University. And I'll now leave this conversation to Judge Gonzalez, who will also introduce our panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm Al Gonzalez. I'm pleased to be here with such a distinguished group of educators and people who really care about the future of this state. And I'm a member of the SCORE board. I believe in SCORE. I believe in its mission. And I know that all of you as well believe in the value of education, and it represents freedom in our country. And that is so true for so many people. So let me introduce everyone quickly. We have the pleasure of hearing from Charlie Friedman, founder and executive director of Nashville Classical Charter School. Dr. Jean Luna Vetter, director of schools for Clarksville Montgomery County School System. Commissioner Denise Thomas, commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And Dr. Michael Torrance, president of Montlow State Community College. So to start off the discussion, I'm going to follow the script, stay on schedule. I've got a question for all of our panelists. SCORE's 24 annual report highlights a lot of the excellent work that's happened across the state, while also calling to build upon Tennessee's legacy of success and commitment to continuous improvement. We've made good progress since I've been here since 2011, but much work remains. So for each of you, what is one area you believe should be a focus for improving in the upcoming year, and why? Believing with you, Charlie.
Thank you.
With you.
So my name is Charlie Friedman. I'm the founder and executive director at Nashville Classical Charter School. but my most important job is I'm also a dad. So I've got a 4-year-old son and a 10-week-old daughter. And I am paying an arm and a leg for childcare right now. And we also are on about 17 different wait lists for our 10-week-old daughter. And so one of the things that I think is really worth considering is how we strengthen the K-12 post-secondary pathways, especially when we think about things like education, which I'm excited to talk about later, and early childcare. I think there's a real shortage of early childcare employees. I think it's a solvable crisis. I think there are 17 and 18-year-olds who would love to be early childhood educators. And I would love to see a world in which we could start educating for them for that early, where they could be in classrooms sooner, and we could really solve this problem for parents and kids all across the city.
Thank you, Jean.
I would say just really elevating the teacher profession. So it doesn't look the same as when I went to college 30 years ago and you went to a traditional EPP and you went to college to be an educator. Our choices look very differently now. And so we've done a lot when we talk about permits and providing flexibilities. What we really need to look at, though, is sustaining that. And what does that look like? So we get individuals in on permits, but then they find out you've got to go back to college. You are earning $40,000 to $50,000 a year, and now you must do all of these things plus pay to go back to school. And so thinking about what that looks like to help them get what they need and do all the supports that we need for our teachers.
Commissioner?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today. You know, I'm the workforce commissioner on the panel, so you probably can already predict what I'm going to say. I certainly would like to see us, and I think we've done a great job notwithstanding, but I'd like to see us do more to make sure that as we're looking through our future workforce, through articulated career pathways, that it actually leads to meaningful employment, that it leads to careers. You know, Tennessee has been experiencing just tremendous economic development and growth, but it doesn't matter if we have those outside looking in. So when we talk a lot about labor force participation, if we look at who's not participating, it's those who have not been prepared to take part in economic opportunity going on around them. And it's not just for the individuals, right? But we think about the trajectories of families and future generations of Tennesseans. So it matters that we do it, and we do it in a way that we can influence one's path so that we don't have to see sort of this cycle of individuals getting excited about a career opportunity and, oh, I'm not prepared for it, right? And so we don't want to bring hope and then lose it. And so I think that's something that I certainly would like to see us focus on in the upcoming year.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, my response is easy, everything that they said. And then lastly, I'm really interested, and we are interested at the college, about how we create intersection. So intersection with K through 12. And not just focusing on the 12, 24, 36 and the other components of our funding formula, but also how do we reach back and put the community in community college? And that means that getting our alumni base more involved, getting our current employees more involved, getting our administration more involved to communicate the importance of intersection. And so this year's theme for us is connected, the idea of creating a matrix of where what we do on a day-to-day basis in terms of student support services, workforce development, academic preparedness, et cetera, is tied to our industry and business partners. And not in the theoretical underpinning way, but in a very real, applied, and tangible way. Students, as well as parents, Charlie, I'm one of those too. I'm a girl dad, by the way, which is, I think I one-upped you just now. What's really important about this conversation of what does it take to prepare a student for the next step, we need to see, and they need to see, involved in our curriculum development design, human-centered design, preparing for the work of today as well as the future.
Thank you. Well, let's dig into this topic a little bit more deeply. We know having a highly effective educator in the classroom can be a huge difference maker. We all know that for students. And we often hear about localized teacher shortages in Tennessee and how the state's low-income students and students of color, students in rural areas are less likely to be exposed to highly effective teachers. So Jean, as a district leader, you're deeply familiar with the impact of high-quality educators on student achievement. Your district, Clarksville-Montgomery County Schools, has led the nation in thinking innovatively about the teacher pipeline as the first district in the country to create a permanent grow your own registered teaching apprenticeship. Could you reflect on your experience with that initiative to support new pathways for educators to enter the profession?
Absolutely. So while this is only my second year as superintendent in Clarksville, Montgomery County, at the time that the Grow Your Own program began, I was the high school director. And so to be quite honest, at the time, we were in a little bit different place. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. We did not have the crucial shortage that we have today. But really, as we sat around the table, a lot of our conversation was around the fact that our teachers do not look like our students. We have about 50% diverse student population at the time. We had about a 16% teacher diverse. And so that's really where the conversation started. It was fortunate for us that it worked out well, that we are at the place we are now. But when we look at where we are, we support our, we took paraprofessionals, we took students just coming out of high school, and we developed a 3-year program, and we had a cohort with immense support. They were assigned mentor teachers, those level 5 rock star teachers, and we really embedded them in the classrooms. They got to see firsthand for 3 years, not just a 6-week or a 12-week teaching experience, about what good teaching looked like. We gave them support throughout those entire 3 years. We had support groups. We helped them along in all of their studies. They took the same classes with their classmates. For some of these individuals, they had been a paraprofessional for maybe 20 years and had not been back to the classroom. But what we're seeing now is we are now in a place where they are teaching. And so they are our teachers. We started this in 2017. And so when we look at our data, we are really excited to see that some of these teachers from our teacher residency program, they have a higher level of effectiveness than the average first-year teacher. They have a higher retention rate. Right now, we have about 150 teachers that have gone through this program. Approximately 1/3 of them are diverse. And so that has elevated what that looks like. We also have right now 122 teacher residents who are somewhere along the pipeline that are feeding into the system. So we would have been in much worse position for our teachers if we had not started this program many years ago.
Thank you. Great story. Charlie, you lead Nashville Classical Charter Schools, which operates 2 high-performing K-8 public school sites in Nashville. Supporting and developing high-quality educators has been a key component of your strategy to serve students effectively. So what innovative strategies have you found to be most effective for supporting teachers across their career arc and ultimately increasing student achievement?
Thank you. And just to build on what Jean was saying, our school over the last 10 years, our first class of students graduated last year. And by the time they were in 8th grade, those students, about 80% of whom were Black or Hispanic, over half of whom live in poverty, outscored every single district in the state of Tennessee on the ELA and math TCAP. And the only reason why they were able to do that was because of amazing teachers. And I just believe in my heart of hearts that teaching is the hardest, most rewarding, most important job in the world. I think to really explain that, just as like a short anecdote that someone once told me, if you compare a teacher to a brain surgeon surgeon's job is to restructure a part of the brain they can see, one patient at a time, with an entire team of assistants and the most sophisticated technology in the world. A teacher restructures parts of the brain without being able to see it. They do it 30 kids at a time, and some of those kids don't really want to be there. And oftentimes they're not using much more than a chalkboard and a piece of chalk. And so truly, right, like teaching is the hardest job in the world, and when someone is amazing at that, they deserve all of our support. And so what our program did is we invested in both a resident pathway, like Jean did, but also invested heavily in our mentors. And so those are, like Jean said, those level 5 teachers, people that are experienced, people who have been in the profession for a long time. And they deserve to be able to go on maternity leave. They deserve to be able to go to doctor's appointments. They deserve to be able to have a meeting where they don't need to run back to their classroom in 30 minutes. And so we assigned them a resident teacher. And what we were able to do is invest heavily in their professional development. And so they feel valued and supported. And we built a pipeline of not just future teachers through this program, because of course our residents have matriculated through the program to become certified teachers, but also a pipeline of future leaders, because those mentor teachers are being trained on how to manage people, on how to observe classrooms, on how to support educators. And so I'm really proud that of our 6 assistant principals, 3 of them actually started as residents in the classroom, then became certified teachers, then became mentor teachers, and now became assistant principals. And so they matriculated through this entire pathway of development. And for us, it's a way to invest in people that show promise. It's a way to make sure that both our teaching force and our leadership force looks like our students. So it's a way to build more diverse pipelines. It's a way to make sure people are prepared for new opportunities. And it's a way to invest in some of the hardest working, most important people in our labor force.
Thank you, Charlie. As a follow-up, before asking that question, where did you get your socks?
So I put these on by accident, but I actually, I wish I knew that. I think I put on some pounds during my parent leave, and so my pants are a little tighter than they were 2 weeks ago. But I got these socks at Teach for America's 20th anniversary summit. So I think shout out to Ben Schumacher.
Very nice.
Technically bought me these socks.
What advice, any additional advice, did you give to any school looking to adopt a similar model to the Lead Mentor Teacher Program? Any additional advice?
So when we bring our mentors and residents together, we like to show them like this picture. It's a comic, but this idea that dogs tend to look like their owners. And what we talk about is basically that residents sort of tend to look like their mentors. And whether you realize it or not, if you are spending hours in a mentor's classroom, you're going to absorb the little things they say when a student doesn't have a pencil, when a student asks to go to the restroom, when a student doesn't understand something. And so what I would say is, please make sure that you are also not just investing in your residents, not just investing at the beginning of the pipeline, but also investing in the people that mentor and support and coach them. Because those people want to be great at their jobs too. And oftentimes they're just being assigned a student teacher, they're just being assigned a resident, and they're not being taught how to support them. And I really believe that if we're investing in teacher leadership, we can make a really, really big difference in the long term. So my advice would be to not just invest in your residents, but to also invest in your mentors.
Thank you. Commissioner. The teacher residency programs just described by Charlie and Jean are wonderful examples of bringing education, learning, and work closer together, which is a key reason why Clarksville Montgomery's Grow Your Own model became the first registered apprenticeship for teaching. Commissioner, apprenticeships are definitely an area the Department of Labor and Workforce Development is leaning in on, as I understand. And with that work, apprenticeships have increased 65% in the last decade. Can you describe why? What led to that, the rise in apprenticeships that lead to a degree or credential? Why are they so valuable for both students and employers?
Yeah, Judge, great question. First, apprenticeships is the intersection of work and learning about work. It collides, those two things collide. So you get to earn and learn. And one is extremely flexible, right? Because you can actually get hands-on experience while you're actually employed, which is a lot of misnomers about apprenticeship. Folks think, oh, well, what do you do to kind of learn to be an apprentice? You're doing while you're learning. So you have a job from day one. And so that really helps with barrier mitigation, particularly for communities of color that oftentimes have difficulties figuring out how to mitigate barriers, such as, how will I pay for transportation or childcare or any of those things? Well, you're employed day one, and you get to actually put your hands to work, learn, have a mentorship component built into it. So you have someone that's actually taking you by the hand day one, showing you not just the technical and hard skills, but all the actual components that come with work. And there's a proficiency. So after each year, if I've learned what I need to learn, there's a wage increase sort of built into that. And those are for time-based apprenticeships. They usually average somewhere between 4 and 5 years. And so we see models across our state of actually young adults, kids in high school starting youth apprenticeship programs. So by the time they graduate, they're halfway done on journeyman status, which is amazing. And as I like to say, because I'm a mom, right? Like that gets the kids off your couch, right? And they're earning so that they can have their own apartment and they can be economically viable in a high demand career. And so what we saw even during the pandemic, when everything seemed to flatten, apprenticeships were steadily growing. Because folks that were thinking about what's my new next, like what career opportunities do I see myself doing? Because some folks did not want to go back to careers they had during the pandemic. Apprenticeship became extremely popular because I had a chance to really do it and learn. I also think the flexibility that it allows, The fact that you can kind of get into an apprenticeship and really kind of experiment. We see a lot of this with our younger apprentices. They'll kind of get in, particularly in skilled trades, and go, well, let me try my hand at plumbing a little bit, but maybe I like this area a little bit better. There's flexibility because there's transferability in some of the skills and the trades that they're learning as well. And so I think the economic independence that comes with apprenticeship is extremely popular. And the fact that for our kids who may not see themselves as just the academic geniuses, get to see themselves as the do something geniuses, right? Like maybe I'm not good at theoretical learning, but if you put a tool in my hand, or if you give me an experience, a hands-on experience that I can really grab a hold of, now I exceed. And so I think apprenticeship really opens up the door for those that are on a traditional academic path, or those that want to do more of sort of the quick skill credentials. It allows an opportunity for all folks to really come in and take part in that. And so it's not by accident. And I'm so glad Tennessee got to be the first Grow Your Own. We beat out Iowa narrowly, but we did. Yay, Tennessee. But I think we're seeing sort of this emergence of not just the traditional apprenticeship opportunities that people tend to just link to skilled trades, but we're seeing apprenticeship opportunities for teachers in healthcare. We're having tremendous conversations about standing up apprentices in the healthcare industry, in the IT industry. So there's no occupation that's really off limits. So it allows our kids to dream and do. And I think that's what's the most exciting about apprenticeship in our state.
Commissioner, as a follow-up, how can employers and educational entities work together, collaborate to ensure that apprenticeships are effective?
Yeah, and I think by nature, apprenticeships are employer-led, right? And so I think it's the rigor assigned to that particular skill or trade or occupational sector. And so employers lead apprenticeship in that they say, this is what you need in order to be credentialed or licensed. So it follows an in-demand path from day one. So we're not just allowing folks to go through an apprenticeship program and they're kind of guessing what they need to know, but it is already industry designed, industry certified. There's credentialing along the way. And what I love about it, although I would love to keep all of our talent in Tennessee, what we know is that individuals have choices and they want to make choices that's best for them and their families. The portability that's associated with credentials and apprenticeship allows you to take what you've learned no matter where you go. And so when we register an apprenticeship, it's very important to us to make sure the rigor attached to it allows you to take your certification and licensure no matter where you may go. So whether you start in Tennessee and you end up across the country, which we don't want to see happen, but that credentialing goes with you. So no matter where you land, you have an opportunity to be economically viable. That is so important. When we look at commuting patterns and where folks are coming into our state or leaving our state, we got to make sure that we're doing the right thing for individuals and their families. And by having the employer voice at the beginning, that allows some of the transferability that we see. And I think that too helps to make apprenticeship an exciting endeavor for both employers and for future apprentices.
Thank you. Charlie, coming back to you very quickly for a moment. To hear more about a particular unique challenge you've experienced as you work to better serve Tennessee's K-12 students. As we just mentioned, you lead Nashville Classical Charter Schools, which has been operating a very successful K-8 public charter school in East Nashville since 2013. Nashville Classical East serves a racially, economically, and geographically diverse group of elementary and middle school students, and its proficiency rates are higher than both district and state averages. Despite all the success, one of the challenges you faced as you expanded in 2022 to serve more students was finding an affordable, high-quality facility. Could you share what barriers exist for funding and securing facilities for Nashville Classical and how this ultimately impacts students?
Sure, thank you. So, like you said, our school educates racially and economically and geographically diverse population. And I think that's really important. There's a lot of, I think, misunderstandings about public charter schools. And so I think it's important to name, right, that our school is free. No one pays anything to attend it. Our school's open to all. And so you can live on any block of our city and come to our school. And in a city and a state and a country, frankly, where our housing and our neighborhoods don't reflect the diversity that make our city and our state and our country such a beautiful place, I think that's so important. Because our classrooms are going to look like our neighborhoods unless there are ways for families to attend optional schools and schools of choice. And then last of all, of course, there's no fees or no tests to attend, right? And so our students come to us with disabilities, they come to us as new Americans, They also come to us as people who've lived in our neighborhoods for generations. And so that's really, really important. And I think it's part of why our school is unique. But the reality is, our school almost never opened. And so when we first proposed our school and were approved back in 2013, we would meet with families in church basements and libraries and parks. And the school was really built on sort of their hopes and our promises. But the only reason we were able to open was because there was a little 4-room schoolhouse that was an old East Head Start. It was the first Head Start building in the state of Tennessee, and it had been empty for a while. And you had a mayor who was really excited about public charter schools, and he wanted to make sure that that building could be used. And then the only reason why we were able to expand and grow to grades K through 8 is because of courageous work of local elected officials, one of whom's in the room, School Board Member Buggs, who I just will spend the rest of my life grateful for. Our school was outgrowing our building. We had about 37 students in some classrooms, and we never would have been able to serve grades K through 8. But there happened to be a school building that was going to be empty in our neighborhood, and we were able to have an opportunity to lease that building. And since then, we've invested over $1 million to improve that building. We pay about $600,000 a year in rent. And my hope is that through policy, there can be ways in which we're not spending the equivalent of 10 teacher salaries every year on rent. There can be opportunities where schools like ours, and I think I should preface this by saying, it was really hard to open our school, and it should be. The most important thing, and the most important thing that Tennessee has done, is have really rigorous authorization policies. It is really important that it should be difficult to open a charter school. There should be rigorous processes to open one. But that when you're a new school, you don't have access to capital. You don't have access to a facility. And the reality is that the people who are coming behind me, the next generation of charter school leaders, they're more likely to be people of color, they're more likely to be women, and they deserve the same opportunities that I had. And part of that is just sort of making a list publicly available of what buildings are empty, of where there's classroom space and things like that. And so the reality is, there are states, and it's as diverse as, you have New York, California, and Minnesota, you have Georgia and Arizona, that have laws in place where there's dedicated funding for charter school facilities, because oftentimes charter schools get left out of local capital budgets. And so you have dedicated funding for charter school facilities that come from states, so that you're not spending all that money that you could be spending on teachers and books on your building. That there are just policies and procedures so that new charter schools and growing charter schools know what facilities are available and what those look like. And then there are opportunities to grow. Because a charter school, like I said, we were a brand new organization, a brand new entity. If I showed up at a bank, they were going to laugh me out the door. If I said, what I need is a 40,000 square foot facility. I was meeting with people in playgrounds. I was talking to them just on the streets. And so how do you also have opportunities where you can access financing at the type of affordable rates that our public school districts are able to access as well? And so I think at the end of the day, there's some common sense changes that can happen that can make sure that schools like ours and the next generation of public charter schools have opportunities that our students deserve, because the reality is that the kids who attend our schools are more likely to be Black or Hispanic in a city like Nashville. They're more likely to be economically disadvantaged. And at the end of the day, they're oftentimes getting less than they should and less than they deserve because of this funding mismatch.
Thank you, Charlie. Commissioner, given your state leadership with workforce development, I'd like to turn to you for a workforce perspective. We know that successfully navigating the education pipeline is so important for students to be prepared for a career. To effectively prepare students for careers enabling economic independence, how do we need to use data to ensure alignment between education and workforce development?
So I'll try to stay away from some of the common buzzwords and vernacular when we talk about data. I'll be very practical in my response. I think in order for us to do what we need to do, we need to know what we need to know. And essentially that's making sure that we're sharing information, data, usable, discernible data to really impact decisions, and not just using data to inform, but using data to evaluate, right? Because we'll tend to use data to make decisions, but how do we know those decisions were the right ones? So I think we have to come full circle and go back and evaluate to see if they really matter. And I'll tell you, at the department, we understand and grateful for TN data, but we knew in order for us to get ahead of what was coming in a shifting labor market, we needed to do more. And so we joined forces with the Midwestern Data Collaborative. I want to thank my friend, Dr. Rich Roda, who's in the audience, because ETSU was an early adopter. And we said, we need to learn how you're using data in your states. And so we've always really looked to KY Stats, our friends in Kentucky, as our North Star. What was incredible was that they brought all of their data to bear from all of their educators in their state, from correctional institutions, anything that could potentially inform someone on a career journey. They brought it to the table, and they made sure that they could look at the data in a way that was respectful, that it didn't violate any privacy concerns. But you had a group of folks at the table that were not just using it for research, but using it for action. And I thought that was pretty impressive. And so we want to be a part of that. Now, we are now in Tennessee, we're part of a Southern Collaborative, an Eastern Collaborative, and a Midwestern Collaborative. Don't ask me how. Geography doesn't make sense. But we're a part of every data collaborative that can help us get to and uncover what we need to learn so that we can be on the front end of making sure that our labor market information is available to all who needs it. And I'll close by saying this. It could be as simple as the labor market information that our department sees each and every day. How do we get that into the hands of educators in the K-12 space? We don't need to be advising folks on the high end or at the tail end of their journey about occupations that are declining. But if we're not sharing that information and we're all not seeing the exact same thing, we could be ill-advising students about a career path unintentionally because we're not all looking and discerning the labor market demand the same. And not just on the quantitative side, but qualitatively, when we're learning and hearing from employers about the technical and durable skills they need, how is that information collected and shared out across the ecosystem around education and workforce? And so I think there's more to be done there around data. We always think about the tough research topics. I think it can be as practical as saying, when I know something, I need to share it because everyone can benefit from it.
Good advice. To my new friend, Dr. Torrance. I'll go to you next. As Commissioner Thomas just shared, one critical component of an effective education to work pipeline is data. As a post-secondary institution leader, how do you use data? And I'm really interested in this because of our previous conversation before this panel, to generate valuable insight at the institution level to understand a student's progress through education and to the workforce.
Well, we're a driver, and I'll sit up for this. That was my phone, don't worry about it. It's got one of those really cool cases on. I think I drove it from 25 feet, it still works. We're a driver at Model State Community College, and I think that it's a reflection of the men and women that I get to work with on a day-to-day basis. Our responsibility, and we tie the success that we have actually to our data, because as the commissioners pointed out, there's data awareness, there's data for assessment, but from our perspective, it's about health. So the health of your community is really tied to the education that's provided in the community. So being able to leverage data in an applicable way for us is very, very important. It is a luxury to be able to sit and pontificate on the stage today and have a conversation amongst really smart and bright people who are engaged in policy development, engaged in the development of pipelines and curricula, on-ramps, off-ramps, inputs, throughputs, and outputs. That's a luxury. But on a day-to-day basis, having conversations with people who live amongst conditions that we would not like them. Okay, they're deplorable. So I drive through our communities on their day-to-day basis. 11 counties, 4,500 square miles, and adjacent reciprocity with Madison County and Huntsville. So for me and our team, the use of data as an applicable tool is to be able to drill down to the zip code. We don't get to point the finger. We don't get to wag the tail of the dog. The important complexity of this is that if we know that a zip code has a high school that is underprepared, that means the student will graduate underprepared. Okay, they graduate underprepared. Our responsibility is to get them prepared for the workforce, to get them prepared for the literacy level that they should be at. That is our job, that is our mission, that's what we're supposed to do. So leveraging data down to the zip code is really important to us. We've used some things like opportunityindex.org, and then I have a great team of people that work in our institutional research area. I literally dream about the work that I get to do every day because it's fun. And I had a dream about what a data dashboard would look like. that's sort of funny, and then it's like, that's really nerdy. But it's like, hey man, you probably need to take a vacation as well. But if you were to look at our fact book, it reflects what wakes me up sometimes. The commitment of men and women who are on the front lines, answering the questions on a day-to-day basis, preparing people for not the jobs that we have, but the jobs that are here and the jobs that are forthcoming is really, really important. So leveraging data for that type of network and to have some synchronicity around why we look at what we're looking at. And I'm looking at Amy and Russ that I work with from time to time, and they tell me, you want to do what? It is really pivotal. It's pivotal that we're able to actually disaggregate the data, to use one of those polysyllabic words that Denise said. I'm going to speak about this in an actionable way, but we have to disaggregate the data for the purpose of making impact, not just measurables.
Thank you. Jane, Clarksville Montgomery County Schools has an innovative data sharing partnership to ensure students are ready for post-secondary education in the workforce. Could you share, well, you can share, of course, will you share a little more about the key components of that partnership, why it's a priority for your district, and how it has enabled your community to better support students in their transition to post-secondary?
Absolutely, and I can say I can relate to dreams about data dashboards. But in our work with Greater Together, we partner with the TCAT, we partner with Austin Peay State University and Nashville State Community College. In the K-12 space, it is not acceptable for us to hand a student their diploma and say, good luck. We need to make sure that they have a plan, that there is steps in place for them to be successful in the next endeavor. So we have partnered with this team, and really what we do is we look at our seniors. We have a data dashboard for every single senior, and we can see what is their ACT score, have they completed Tennessee Promise, have they finished their FAFSA, have they applied for any TCATs or any colleges whatsoever, and what do they need to do to finish that? So is their application still in process? Do they need to do reference checks? Like, what are the things that they have not done that we can follow up at the school level to make sure that every student has a plan? The other thing we've done is really look at, so let's say the student wants to apply to Austin Peay State University. They didn't have the grades. They didn't have whatever they needed. We follow up and we make sure that our TCAT and our Nashville State Community College sends them a letter and says, here, you didn't get in here, but here's some other options for you. We need to make sure our students realize there's not just one pathway. You want to go to a 4-year, it doesn't mean you need to start at the 4-year. It means you might need to go to a 2-year first. It means you might want to go to TCAT and get some industry credentials and then pursue a 4-year. Or maybe you get a really good job and you don't want to go to the 4-year. We really talk about the different options and opportunities. We've also doubled our summer bridge program. So again, those students who we can lose them from May to August and we don't know where they go. And so putting them in these summer bridge programs, we've seen a 96% matriculation rate. So those students who have signed up to say they're going to these places, 96% of them now go. Compared to those who are not in summer bridge, in our school system, it's an 88%. Compared to statewide, it's an 84%. So we're really seeing some of these partnerships. I think the big thing that we emphasize is we are not competing with one another. The TCAT's not competing with the 4-year, is not competing with the 2-year. There is plenty of space for all of us. And what does that look like when we work together?
Great. Michael, as Jean just shared, one value of the data insights that we've been discussing can be how it informs partnerships. Thinking now about potential partnerships between education and industry, what do you believe is the role of post-secondary education in designing workforce-aligned academic programs and dual enrollment opportunities that prepare students for high-quality careers?
Universal integrated systems that are boundless. That flows off my tongue because I say it a lot. The idea that business and industry is separate from our ecosystem is false. They are part and parcel of the reason that we do what we do. We should be looking at dual enrollment options and data disaggregation as a mechanism to develop programs that are situated based on our regional approach, right? What kinds of businesses and industry exist in Davidson County? What kinds of businesses and industry exist in the the 3 areas of the state, which I really think it's 6 because there's a north and southern part of it, bifurcated by the interstate. That's another conversation for another time. That was supposed to be funny too, by the way. But this idea of making sure that our programs, especially when we talk about dual enrollment, that we're preparing young men and women for the jobs that are within their locale. We don't want to continue to see, as we see in some of the areas of Tennessee where small town rural, people continue to leave and not returning. You should be able to, in all 95 counties in the state of Tennessee, work, thrive, live, love, laugh, play, and find yourself either cremated or buried, and you've had a great life because of the education attainment opportunities that are right there at home. So those are the ways I think are really, really important. The businesses and industry, they expect for us to understand what is the quote unquote end product. So our UX or user design focused on these programs that we build, these young men and women walk in ready to go. Now, most industries say that we need 90 days for them to get acclimated to our programs. And I say, well, that means that we need to go backwards and need to replicate what you do where you are so that our programs reflect it. So our business roundtable action committees, our advisory boards, need to have folks that are not afraid to ruffle our feathers and make us uncomfortable in curriculum design and program design. It needs to reflect the jobs that are available.
Thank you. Well, in our last few minutes, and I've got one final, I think, question that if you could limit your answers, that would be appreciated. So we have an audience full of leaders from across the state. So when we leave here today, what is the most important action you believe they should start pursuing in their communities to build a brighter future for Tennessee students? Beginning with you, Charlie.
Work our way down. Yeah, so I think just reflecting on everything that's been shared at this panel, I teach kindergartners how to read. Commissioner Thomas, you're helping adults in the labor force, and it might seem like we're really far apart, but I do think one of the things that we have in common is just talking about how you can use things like data to sustain and cultivate some of the successes and reforms that have already exist. And so one of the reasons why I really believe in something like charter school facilities is that the 40,000 kids in our state's charter schools are a real success point. And how do you sustain and cultivate that over the next 20, 30 years feels really important. And so I think my advice would be to follow and support evidence-based practices, whether it's with kindergartners or people that are in their careers.
Thank you. Jane?
I would just say, and not to be too kumbaya here, but really just working together. And so no matter whether you're at the state board, Department of Ed, legislator, private, public, whatever that looks like, we all have common issues and concerns when we think about education. And so how can we partner together? What are those concerns? Being open. So for instance, I have a representative who texted me the other day and said, hey, what can we do about CDLs? Normally K-12 is not going to touch CDL. I said, we're going to make it happen. We're going to pilot something this spring with some of our 18-year-olds and see what it looks like to get them on the right track toward a CDL and being able to make that happen. So just, I think, thinking outside the box and working together to solve some of the issues.
Commissioner?
So I'll be quick. Educators call them students. I call them future workforce. They are our workforce now. Some of them are older students, and they will be workforce to come. And let me just tell you, when we look at the projections in Tennessee, we need every one of our students prepared and ready if we're going to meet the economic demand that is current and if we're going to meet the ongoing projections. So we need to be talking to your workforce partners, even though they're practitioners. You go, they're not educators, but guess what? If we're not in the same room, we're not doing it right.
Michael?
Seek actionable continuity between the various groups that are in the room. I hope that you exchange more than a business card with someone. If you give someone a business card, do you really want to talk to them, or are you going to give them your phone number? Thought for a second. Secondly, make sure that as we talk about K-12 through the workforce, that we also make sure we're aware of those who are behind the wall, as well as those who are aging out of foster care, folks who are coming from being trafficked or coming up some type of recovery program. Those are other components of a desired workforce. Everyone has an opportunity and the acumen to learn. I haven't met a Tennessean that doesn't do something or build something, literally. So making sure that we attack those groups and make them aware of what's available. I wonder today, because I'll ask our team at Motlow the same question, do you know and are you aware of all of the data and components that are at your fingertips in the state of Tennessee. And if you don't, I hope that you find some time to make yourself aware of it.
I want to thank the panel for your time and your expertise. Please join me in saying thanks to the panel. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Judge Gonzalez, for facilitating just such an engaging discussion around these priorities and recommendations. Thank you to our panelists for your perspective today. We clearly have a lot of work to be proud of as a state, but we also know we're not serving all students well yet, so we have a lot more work to do. I want to just close by saying a couple of quick thank yous. First, we are so grateful to have with us today here in person so many state leaders. I want to just call out a couple of folks in particular from the legislature. Grateful to have Chairman Slater and Chairman Sapicki here with us. Thank you for your leadership. We have leadership from the governor's office, Sarah Morrison and Bob Eby from the State Board of Education. Really grateful to have you here. Stephen Gentile and Tara Scarlett from the Higher Education Commission, Russ Deaton, so many other partners from the board, the Board of Regents, and leadership and partners from the Department of Education in particular, as well as our partners from the State Charter Commission. So many state leaders who are here. I know there are lots of folks that I'm leaving out, so apologies in advance, but grateful to have so many of our state partners who are working with us on this work here in person with us today. And I also want to say a thank you to a member of our SCORE team. Madeline Price led all of the work around this year's State of Education in Tennessee report. Madeline, are you here somewhere? There's Madeline. Yep. Thank you, Madeline. And I know led the work of engaging with so many partners in this room around the recommendations that we are making today. So just to close, I feel so grateful to work alongside so many of you in this room and leaders across our state. We definitely know this work would not be possible without you. I hope you will join us in the year ahead to advance the priorities that we outlined today to work to build a brighter future for Tennessee students. Also hope that you will share this report, recommendations that we outlined, with partners that you work with. So there's a QR code on the screen that you can scan to get the report digitally. Obviously, you have the printed copies here today, and you can always access more copies by engaging with our SCORE team. So thank you all again for your time this morning, for your engagement with us, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. We are adjourned. Thank you.